Good evening. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education on Tuesday, November 12th. And do we have some friends here to lead us in the pledge?
Absolutely. Ms. Schaefer's here to introduce us to some of these beautiful pandas.
Yes. Okay, come on. Go ahead. Come on up with me.
Now we're ready
So,
to go.
this is Jackie Jenkins. She is in kindergarten. She is actually the daughter of Rebecca Jenkins, who teaches first grade. And you have never ever heard Country Roads Take Me Home until you have heard her sing it, because she has got a beautiful singing voice. All right, just slide over here with me. This is Olivia Simpson. She is the daughter of Megan Simpson, who also teaches first grade. She wasn't going to come, but then she got promised, she's like me, we'll work for chocolate, got promised a huge Hershey bar, and so she said, game on. And this, take a good look at this gentleman, because he was principal for the day last year. He won it at our auction, and he has got my job in mind. So I think he's going to be right there. He's got it under control. I could have gone home for the day, and he was all over it. So we are so glad to be here to lead you in the pledge. Say please stand. Say will you please stand?
Please stand. Your right hand over your heart.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well done. And if you're going to be a principal, I probably need to have you sign something before you go.
He is ready. He is ready.
Thank you so much for being here.
She already has them in the system. All right. And then, Madam Superintendent, are you doing the One Jefferson Awards? All right.
Okay, so this is the, I suppose I should walk over here like Hans. You would do the whole thing, don't you? Okay. So I can't do the voice like Mr. Hans Vogel, voice of the Panhandle. But this is the portion of our evening where we honor all of the wonderful people who help make Jefferson County schools possible, who help all these wonderful, successful kids that you saw right there. The people that you're about to see, they're one of the hundreds and hundreds of people who make that happen. So we'll start off with our very first person, which is our One Jefferson Service Person of the Month, and Ms. Joyce White will come up and award that. You're welcome, ma'am.
Brenda, would you step forward, please? This is an emotional one for me. This is my right-hand girl, and I miss her very terribly. So I want to thank Brenda first and acknowledge why she's getting the award, because she is very dedicated. You couldn't look any further for a more dedicated person to the school system than Brenda. You don't even ask her to give. She's just there. She just does it. She's worked in transportation over 20 years.
About 15.
15, okay. It feels like 2015.
Almost
I sent her the card with her 25-year pin
Right.
not a month ago, so I know 25 plus years.
But
in the
I know
system.
she's been at Blue Ridge and she's been at South, so she's been a school secretary as well. She's been out in the schools and served the schools very well. Her customer service, I don't care who calls, what time of day, if it's 6:30 in the morning, if it's 6:30 at night. Hello, this is Brenda, can I help you? And you just want her to help you because she's so wonderful at it. She's efficient. When I needed something, she was there for me. She had the details, she had the facts, she gathered the information, she was accurate. So she was wonderful at anything you ask her to do. And not only with me, the bus drivers rely on her. When they come in, you won't find a bigger line in the transportation office if lines start when they come in after their runs, because they're at Brenda's door. So I got to converse with them and be amongst them. You want to see me? No, I want to see Brenda. And often they did, because Brenda helps them get things sorted out. her knowledge. She can do anything from radio dispatch to give out a trip, the software that we use. She's just wonderful in every facet. And she is very easy to trust, very helpful. Other people trust her, and I am lost without her. But I know that she is doing very, very well at transportation. She's truly found her home there, and I'm excited to present her the One Jefferson Award. And I want to acknowledge, because of her dedication, she puts in a lot of long hours, and so Phil Swinney, thank you so much for letting us borrow her, because he is part of the team as well by default.
It's a family business. So if you could get up there, let me take your picture with the school board. Because I
Okay.
promised Mr. Fogel I'd do a good job, and I'm already in trouble because I forgot to get his real camera. But and I would just make it up, except that this is being recorded, so he would know. Okay, you ready? 1, 2, 3. Smile. I get an extra one. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. And I am happy to see you.
I know.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. And I'll be by your office for some chocolate. Oh, frankly. Yeah, I know. That's perfect. The next One Jefferson Award that we have up is for our professional for service to children, and that will be Miss Thomasa. Are you announcing?
I am.
I thought so. Ms. Vandale, I have my glasses up, so I had to squint. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome, ma'am.
So this person doesn't know why she's here. She thinks she's here because we're going to talk about options program. But you're our winner, Miss Jill Gimple. So, Mrs. G, I looked up Jill in Urban Dictionary today, and it says natural swag without even trying. Obviously, look at her. Her interests are extremely broad, which makes her even more to die for. Very much her. Everyone should have at least one Jill in their life. They must know our Jill, because that's our Jill. She can do everything. She has everything in her room. If you need a drill, you can go see our Jill. If you have an ant problem, go see Jill, and she will make up some environmentally friendly solution that will get them. She has painted the OLC. She's written grants. She got us a Cricut last year. This year she got us a 3D printer, and she works hard at learning how to use those and teaching it to all of us. Sometimes in the afternoon we'll have a speaker cancel, and I'll go to Mrs. G and I'll be like, can you do a craft with them? And I'm like in a panic, and can you cook or something? And she's like, I got it. What would take me 2 hours to just Google, she throws together in 15 minutes, and it's sensational. She has all the supplies in her room. She's just so knowledgeable. Her lesson plans aren't what some teachers do, where they just erase the dates and do them again the next year. That's not our Mrs. G. She does something new every year. It might be the same concept, but she builds on it, and she's always trying new things. It's one of my favorite things about Mrs. G. If I do ask her to do something, and like feel bad, I'm like, can you please do this? She just looks at me with this face like, well, it's my job to do, Mrs. Vandal. She's just so easygoing. We love her, and we kind of have a pact. I'm not leaving the OLC as long as she's there, and she's not leaving the OLC as long as I'm there. So I love you, and thank you for all you do. We have 2 students who are going to say something briefly about the wonderful Mrs. G. Matt Bush, he's one of our option students. Matt. Come on up.
Good evening. So I've been there for probably 3 years, off and on, through the OLC and the options program, because school wasn't the best fit for me. So I went through the options program, and I hated school. I hated it. It was the worst. And then the first day I walked into OLC, it was like so joyful and so spiritual, and Miss G was my teacher. So I had 5 subjects to cover through the options program, and I didn't realize it, but Miss G was my teacher for all 5. So I finished science. Next subject, Miss G taught me. Next subject, Miss G taught me. Next subject, Miss G taught me. I only have 1 subject left to go. So when they say she's a jack of all trades, she really is. And she's helped us through so much. She's always positive. She's always leading us in something, helping somebody, and I mean, we couldn't do it without her. So I really appreciate it.
And then we have somebody from our day program, my doll, my Miss Isabella Thompson.
Yeah, girl. Okay, I wrote it down. Okay. I just want to say thanks to Mrs. G for being the best teacher. She always goes above and beyond to take care of us and make sure we understand the subject. She comes to school every morning with a positive attitude and hardworking attitude, which helps keep us and the other students motivated. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm looking forward to this year with you.
Well, thank you.
So once again, so if you're out in the streets and you see a woman that's got swag and they've got everything going on and they know a lot, you just say, must be a Jill. Congratulations. Thank you.
I kept saying, why are you telling me what I should be saying in my speech about options?
I will appropriately title it swag for her. Ready? 1, 2, 3, swag. And a bonus. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Urban Dictionary. Way to work your way around the firewall, girl. I love you.
On my cell phone.
Oh! You can
Yes.
Google anything. Nice. That was sweet. That was sweet. Okay, and last but never ever least, we couldn't function in this school system and produce these absolutely, first of all, whoo, God love you, Thomas Vendel. I am loving me some OLC. You guys are killing it. You're just killing it every day. You make me want to cry when I look at you. But we rely on hundreds of volunteers to make our school system work. Parents, community members, folks who don't even have kids in our system. They love schools, they love what we do, and they help us to help kids. So the last fabulous person that we have to recognize today is from South Jefferson, and our volunteer One Jefferson person.
Alrighty. Hello, everybody. I'm here to introduce Suzanne Hersey. Come on up. She's dying. She does not want to do this. So Mrs. Hersey is actually the mom of Kelly McKee, one of our instructional coaches. And Mrs. Hersey was in education for 18 years in Virginia, and when she retired in 2010, it just so happened that her daughter taught kindergarten at South Jefferson. And you don't kick back and relax. You say, I'm going to go volunteer with kindergartners. So she came to our school and volunteered in her daughter's class. And then when Mrs. McKee moved up to first grade, she really needed Mrs. Hersey at that time. And so she moved up to first grade. And then when Mrs. McKee became our reading interventionist, her mom continued to work with our first and second graders with reading. And just to give you an insight into her, when Kelly became the instructional coach this year and left our school, we got to keep Mrs. Hersey. And we all talked about it. Will she come back? What will happen? We didn't know. We got the twofer, but she stayed with us because she was smart. No, I'm kidding. And we are just really, I think you sometimes become, there's something constant in your world and you don't realize how much you rely on it or how much you take it for granted. And I realized that she's been working at our school since 2010. So when I stopped to tell her that not only was she nominated, but she was actually selected as a volunteer of the month, well, I didn't think she was going to come. And she said, well, I just do it for the kids. And that pretty much sums up who she is. We would be lost without her. and we're very grateful. I didn't look up her name in the Urban Dictionary, but I'm sure if I did, it would be a fantastic thing. So we're just very grateful, and you deserve to know how much we appreciate you. Thank you. So now you get your picture taken. Her favorite part.
So it was kindergarten and now it's first grade? Is that it? Kindergarten and now first grade?
Just first grade.
Oh, okay, well, that's a combat medal award if I ever saw one. Ready? 1, 2, 3, smile and bonus. There we go, perfect. Thank you, you're a brave woman.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jill? She's like, I'm not in it for the money. You're welcome. You're welcome. So thank you so much. This is the portion for those of you who don't really need to watch the sausage getting made. Leave with no repercussions. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your kind words.
Thank you for doing this for our employees.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. So actually, the primary reason for me doing that is because I don't want to have to present in front of 80 people. I'd rather present in front of 5 or 10 because you know how shy I am. Ms. Harner. I don't think the cameras picked that up, Ms. Harner. How did I? No. So the next item on the agenda tonight is an enrollment presentation. We're actually working to set a standard series of presentations before the board at certain times every year. And this enrollment presentation following our October 1 child count is one of them. So essentially we want to give you an idea of student growth, of numbers, of trends that we see, and of the things that we are looking at to maintain the kind of very strong, vibrant, robust community that you saw here today. So like anything else, you start off with the strong and then you slip the medicine in between and then you come back. So one of the things of note is that for the last 4 years, we have seen a steady decline in our student population. Now that decline has, it looks fairly precipitous there, but part of it is just the scale of things. Overall, in the last, since 2016-17, we're really down about 2%. Doesn't sound like a huge amount of kids. And it's not for any 1 year. That's a cumulative 3-year total. We're down 2%. And what's a little bit concerning about those is, if you'll remember back here in 2015-16, you perhaps foolishly retained a new superintendent, and we had seen some growth. We saw some overcrowding in our schools. And then we saw our numbers go up even more, and we saw where we were getting all of these residential facilities built and all these new businesses. So we did a redistricting. And at the time, based on our 10-year projections, we were growing at an average rate of about 78 kids a year. That was based on a 10-year rate. Well, once you get all the way out here to 1920, now a rolling 10-year rate is about 14 kids a year. Okay, because we've had a couple of years down and we've moved outside of the range of those sort of go-go years when real estate was really booming and you were seeing big jumps in student attendance. If you just average these last 5 years, it's an annual loss of students, okay? So that comes with some interesting responsibilities that we need to look at and we need to talk about. So I'm sure one of the things that you're curious about, and this chart is what it is, you can see it a lot better back here, but essentially this is our October 1 child count. Now, if you were to sit here and go into any of these schools today, their numbers might be slightly different. We have kids leave and come in every single day, but the day we get paid for is October 1st. That's the day that is our official child count. So this is every school in Jefferson County at every grade level, and there are a couple of interesting things for this year. One of the things that I highlighted on here, the 4 elementary schools that you see in yellow are ones that currently have an assistant principal. The 3 schools that you see in blue are the next highest schools on our rubric of need. Some of them, such as C.W. Shipley, has exactly the same number of students in Blue Ridge Elementary and Blue Ridge Primary combined with no AP and a new principal. So even with some declining numbers, we have some very large schools. So a couple things about our current enrollment. Number one, we have this very large bubble that's moving through, that's in the 7th grade right now. So I've heard lots of, the usual stories about snowstorm that year, and who knows? These bubbles happen for a whole host of reasons. But as it moves through, we're having to bump up teachers as it's coming in and drop them down for the class behind it. So I'm going to show you some ups and downs in enrollment. Some of those are long-term trends, and some of them are just big bubbles moving through, all right? So we need to distinguish between those. A couple other things that I want to point out. Shepherdstown Middle School currently has 331 students enrolled in it. It is smaller than all but 2 of our elementary schools. That presents a significant challenge for us in terms of infrastructure, in terms of cost per pupil. Running very, very small schools is cost prohibitive. It's cost prohibitive because of infrastructure, and it's mostly cost prohibitive because of staff. You need a librarian, you need a principal, you need facilities, you need cafeteria workers, you need all of those things regardless of how many kids you have in the school. So fewer kids spread out across those staff just raises your per pupil cost in that. Now I say that for no other reason, no takeaway from that other than we need to continue to monitor those numbers, and we're working on making sure that they have the staff that they need. But it's important to realize when you have that few a number, especially in middle school, scheduling gets to be a nightmare for us, okay? If you only have 1 7th grade math teacher, it's hard to run 3 different levels of 7th grade math. So our flexibility in a school that small gets to be pretty difficult, and that's something to keep in mind as time goes by. T.A. Lowry continues to be our largest elementary school by far. It houses the vast majority of our special needs programs, and Kristen Martin does an exemplary job. And as I pointed out, C.W. Shipley is the same size as our 4 elementary schools that currently have APs, but does not. North Jefferson is the other school where we have very, very small enrollment. We currently have 244 kids in that school. And again, it makes it quite difficult in a couple of arenas when you only have 1 teacher per grade level for a subject. Sometimes some grade levels will have 2 teachers, but it's just, they're so small. They're so very small. It's difficult for collaboration, it's difficult for student movement. It's very cost intensive, and that is a very, very high need school where we have a social worker, we have a full-time counselor, and it is still all hands on deck all the time. So one of the things that I think is important, you saw the October 1 data, and really this is the trend, because seeing that data just static doesn't tell you the change. So this is the population change from last year. It shows you grade by grade, school by school, where the population changes were. So let's talk about those. Number one we saw coming, and we had anticipated it, and that is the change in kindergarten enrollment age. If you'll recall, the legislation was enacted to change kindergarten enrollment by 2 months, right? So it pushed it 2 months back. Now, personally, as an educator, truthfully, I gotta be honest, it's a great idea. Having kids be 2 months older developmentally before they start kindergarten is not a bad thing, particularly, in all due respect, particularly for guys, particularly for boys. Have one myself. He missed the date, and it bode well for him because a lot of things that we asked them to do developmentally are at the edge of their range. But it was really tough for us because that's 2 months worth of population that we lost. So we went down 58 kids in kindergarten. And as you'll see, that had a pretty significant effect on us. Once again, there's that 7th grade bubble that's moving through. So it looks like we went up almost 100 kids in there. Remember, it's just the up and down of having that class move through there. Because so the class behind it looks like they had a huge drop. They didn't. It was just the bubble coming through. Now, where we do have some things that we need to talk about are the places where we saw huge drops. There were essentially 3 schools: Ranson, North Jefferson, and Shepherdstown. Each one of those schools saw very statistically significant double-digit drops in their population, right? And those drops were around a couple of different areas that we'll talk about because we asked all of those folks to do an analysis of their student population. But one of the interesting things about those drops is we can, sort of like with this up and down with 6th and 7th grade, that's a short-term issue as things move through, because you'll see we're down, we're up, we're down, we're up, we're up, we're down. Those kind of waves, you ride those. What really, really concerns me is that right here, early on, you've got 5 flat grades of loss. You've got pre-K, kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, all of which are down. Okay? So that's not a bubble. That is a serious, ongoing, steady decline. There are fewer young kids in the system. So there will be fewer as they age unless we have a lot of people moving in with kids in upper grades. They don't tend to do that. Families don't like to move their kids. It is that arrow, more than anything else in this presentation, scares the bejesus out of me, all right? Because that's a long term. And we'll keep an eye on the ones coming up behind it, but that is a long-term concern because all of those are down double digits, and that is for year after year after year. You're not seeing any large bumps go through there. Now, having said that, interestingly enough, if you took North Jefferson, Ranson, and Shepherdstown Middle School out of the mix with those 3 big losses, we actually grew 44 kids. Statistics is an interesting phenomenon, and we've spent a lot of time talking with the principals about where this phenomena is coming from. There are a lot of different opinions. So the principals went through their rosters from last year student by student and gave us a count of why, to their knowledge, they left and what that loss was attributable to. Now, I would point out you don't have your budget presentation today. You will have it at the 2nd November meeting, but you will note that we're down a total of 101 students. That translates into about $500,000. And it doesn't always arrive in neat little packets of, there's exactly 26 2nd grade students leaving this school, so we'll pull one teacher out. It tends to be 5 students here, 4 students there, 3 students there. So it's very hard to make staffing adjustments unless you have large pockets. We do have a couple of those. We have one in particular at Ranson where we did simply through attrition not have another kindergarten teacher and aide. And there's one coming up at Shepherdstown Middle School where they had a very small sixth grade class come in this year. They have a very small fifth to sixth grade class coming in again next year, so I expect there'll probably be some staffing adjustments there as well. But when we sat down and asked the principals to analyze where is all this coming from, of the 3 schools that saw the biggest drops by far, people moving out of the county, people just not living here anymore. Driftwood, the largest movement was actually out of state. Perhaps not surprising given the population there. Ranson, also students moving out of Jefferson was the largest, but the bulk of theirs moved to Berkeley. With the assessment that perhaps more affordable housing is a greater incentive in Berkeley than in Jefferson. Again, we don't twist people's arms to say, why are you leaving? Give us a chance, take us back. You know, we figure out where they're going based on where we get requests for records from. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Sometimes they tell us, sometimes they don't. North Jefferson, again, theirs wasn't out of state, but theirs was more diverse than heavy to Berkeley. They were sort of all over the place. Also, in addition to out of county movement, there was just exactly what I showed you for those 5 years. Just population change. Just flat out, there aren't as many children. They're just not there. They're not coming and leaving. They're not taking option B. They are not there. They're not registering and going to homeschool. They're not there. So student movement, meaning we've got bigger classes going through and ending up at the upper grades away and smaller classes coming in year after year behind them. That's by far the biggest 1 and 2 on all of these. So one of the things that we looked at was, is it homeschool? Are people taking their kids out because they're making a different choice? And the reality is, homeschool was the lowest student reduction category. We went back for the last 8 years and calculated the percentage of homeschool students versus our entire population. It is staying at a steady 9%. It's 11% in Mon, and it's 10% in Berkeley. They're not leaving us to take another option. Some of them are, certainly, and I would love for every one of them just to come back home. But I support their right to do that. The bigger issue is we just don't have families with small children here in Jefferson, which is an interesting phenomenon. So there's a couple things that we need to talk about as a result of that. We have to attract families. We have to bring families into Jefferson for the school system, not just businesses. You've seen a lot of businesses coming up. Businesses don't have children. They have employees that hopefully have children, but we're not seeing a lot of families with small children. We have to stem that tide mostly because at $500,000, those funding losses have to be absorbed through our system. So that means that over time, we're going to have to make staffing adjustments, which means when I say staffing adjustments, first priority is move people where we need them. As our needs change, I'm going to need the support of the staff to say, hey, I know you love this place and I know you want to be here, and there's 42 kids less over here, but I've got this place over here and this is where you can serve us. So we're going to need folks to be a little bit more open-minded and supportive, and us do a good job of communicating the level of need. Because still, having the staff to serve kids is our #1 priority. We're a people business. Whatever else has to go, it will go before a staff person goes, just flat out. We do have to find some revenue increases and expense decreases, and since we have a hard time generating revenue. We just can't go out and sell our services. We can write grants and do things, but those have to even out. So we looked at this and sort of did a SWOT analysis for those of you who've done those: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. In terms of strengths, we do have a phenomenal staff. We're one of the highest performing school systems in this state. Quite frankly, one of the highest performing school systems in the region. We outperform the state average. We outperform the national average. We have the highest SAT scores. We perform really well. We have great staff, and I don't have any doubts that one of the reasons people stay here, feel comfortable with their children here, is because of the people who care for them. Fiscally, we've managed to weather these drops over the last 3 or 4 years because the board has been very fiscally conservative. The things that we've done, that investment in the transportation facility paid for itself. We got that bus garage for free. We spent $3 million on it. We rented it out for $800,000, and then you sold it for $2.2 million. That was a great deal. The improvements on the fields at Washington High and Jefferson High, paid for out of pocket. You didn't borrow any money to do that. You didn't go out for a bond. Land, we have land for future growth. Didn't borrow any money. Didn't go out for a bond to do that. So we've managed to save money and to be fiscally conservative. So we can weather some of this down drop and protect our staff and help protect kids. But we are going to have to do some incremental things. We also have worked pretty hard to try to be innovative. Virtual, dual enrollment, trauma-informed care, trying to get a day treatment facility here. The things that we think are going to hamper us, residential costs. It is expensive to live in Jefferson. It just is compared to the rest of West Virginia. It's not compared to Loudoun, but compared to the rest of West Virginia or Washington County, yes. Autonomy, some of the things that are in code prevent us from being more cost effective, mostly around staffing, being able to move people around, being able to make adjustments that would help us continue to serve kids but keep our staffing costs the same. And quite frankly, I don't think that public schools are benefiting from some of the bad publicity that basically the media and social media tends to throw at it. They don't put out a lot of solutions. They tend to just point fingers and talk about the state of the current public education system. And I think for some people that gets into their head and they believe that. Now, once they get kids here, most of them don't, but I don't think it always helps us. We do have some opportunities coming up that we can take advantage of to help this. Number one, open enrollment. As of July 1st, the new legislation kicks in, and if you live in West Virginia, your kid can go and enroll in any school system in West Virginia, period. Now, there are some interesting intricacies around that. This isn't the presentation to talk about that in. You will see when we get to the threats portion of this, it is both. It can be a number of good things and it can be a number of very, very difficult things. We also have some opportunities for innovation. It would be very, very nice to see us do some interesting infrastructure things. Families are more flexible. We should be more flexible with them. We should offer drop-in services. We should offer virtual services. We should offer flex scheduling. We should offer off-campus. We should offer teachers in the round where teachers go to different centers, meet with those students for those times. For some families, we're going to have to continue to be childcare while they work. But for other families, we need to start finding ways to be what they need us to be and what their kids need us to be. That's what we're here for. The other opportunity is Loudoun continues to just grow like great guns. And it is growing towards us. So if you guys have seen those metro stations, as soon as people can be in their butt on a metro train in less than 30 minutes, live here and get on a metro into DC, it will come. It will still come. It's just slower, faster, who knows. So the things that could be more difficult for us, open enrollment, yeah. The issue with open enrollment is that the only thing that comes with it is the state will pay you their share for students that you enroll. Because here we have a levy, we actually spend more local dollars than we do state dollars. So if a student comes in, they live in Berkeley, and they come and enroll their child here, all we do is get the December 1 child count. We don't get any of Berkeley's local levy money
all of the services that we give that are above and beyond the state's minimum, we're just spreading those out over more and more kids, all right? Mental health, that's the trend, and that is going to continue to break our backs until we can work with other state agencies to come up with more viable solutions. The rate at which we're hiring counselors and social workers and peer mentors and therapists and past volunteer programs and just throwing everything but the kitchen sink to try to stabilize these kids and help support our teachers, that cost is continuing to grow without any increased revenue. And truthfully, I think one of the things that we have to be really thoughtful about is complacency. We scramble madly like wild ducks up here at the central office, like cutting and moving things around, and we can do without this. And so I think sometimes people out in the schools and people out in the community, they don't see things change. They're like, oh, well, I still have my football team, I still have my travel schedule, I still have my teacher that I love, I still have a full-time librarian, I still have all these things I had before. And if we aren't thoughtful about dealing with them and not just stick our head in the sand and hope it gets better, it will be okay until it's not, and then it will be a hard knot. It will be a hard knot. So little bit incremental decisions at a time so that we keep pace with losses and gains. So basically, it is a challenge, but never waste a good crisis. We really have to do a great job of customer service culture. We used to be the only game in town. Several hundred years, we've been the only game in town, public education. We're not anymore. So we have to sell ourselves to folks. We have to make this a place where you guys want to be. Not you. You're oh man. But, we have to be innovative. We have got to work at delivering services. If I were to hire a teacher, if I were to say, hey, Mr. Bergen, I'm going to give you a class of 25 kids, but none of them are going to be here at school. You're going to rotate. You got to see each one of them twice a week, and you can do it virtually and then twice a week in person down at the library. Oh my God, that's life-changing. Some of the things, if we can get them working, we can get some cooperation from the state. It decreases our infrastructure tremendously. If we shut down one building and we can just rotate kids through or have people out in the field, us shutting down this building one day per week in the summer saved us $43,000 last summer. It's just the heating, the cooling, the lights, the care for the buildings takes a lot. We have to do better about partnering with the community. Every real estate agent here, the Chamber of Commerce, every business, they need people. They need people to buy their stuff. And one of the first things that people look at when they move into a place, they look at the taxes, look at the schools. That's what they look at. So we need to partner with them to keep ourselves strong. We need to be able to tell them our story. I think that we have a lot of work to do to engage the Hispanic community in this county. 10% of our school population is Hispanic, and they have very, very little visible representation in the school system. It is a growing segment of our community. It is a very dedicated and school education focused segment of our community, and we have not done a good job of going to them and welcoming them and saying, how can we make this work for you, work for your family? Giving the teachers and the staff a lot more autonomy. They'll come up with great ideas. They'll come up with good cost-effective solutions if we can get off their backs a little bit and let them, right? And the last thing is just people can't support us if they don't know that this is what's going on. If they have information, they can go out and be our champions for it. So went probably way too long, but I'll take any questions that you have. Yep, that's how I ended it. You gotta just do a hard stop. Ugh. Just right there. What you got for me?
Questions or comments?
I was glad to see you meeting with student governments in the community to see what they come up with, where we need to take them. And I think they can come up with a lot of good ideas for us as well.
Thank you. That was a great forum, by the way. They are amazing. They are utterly amazing. And it was very interesting. A lot of the things that they did talk about, you're exactly right, Mr. Osborne. They talked about wanting to be entrepreneurs and wanting to travel to other countries and wanting to take care of their families and wanting to have flexibility in their lives. They had a lot of ambitions, and a lot of the things that boxes we're making them check aren't boxes that are helping them in their later life. They're just boxes to check for somebody in some office 600 miles away.
I think nationally you're seeing that trend too, where they're saying, couples are holding off till later to have children. We see some of that, so I think some of that is reflected there. But certainly, as you said, we've seen the growth come, from Frederick and from Loudoun County. So it's interesting to see the data. So I really appreciate you doing that comprehensive analysis. Something, like you said, we need to look at and start to make incremental changes so that we don't have the big shock factor at some point. So.
Yeah, and actually part of that too is you make a good point as well. When we redistricted, we knew that huge subdivision was coming in over across from J High and Wildwood. Those houses are $400,000 a piece. I'm sorry, anybody here who has small children? Okay, you got 2 small kids, you're not buying a $400,000 house. You know what I mean? You're buying a starter house. By the time you're buying a $400,000 house, you're later on in your career. Your kids are older, or they're off to college, so some of it is our demographic is changing because the developers here have made some certain choices about what they're doing, the demographic that they're going for.
Also on Channel 9 News, they had a feature on, there's a lot of people having just one child now, opposed to having 2 or 3 or 4. And
They're missing all the fun.
it has to do, well, they're having them later in life, but there's a lot more one-children family.
Well, and I think, with Border Patrol and some of the employment that we have here, they tend to transfer to other areas. So, looking at the types of businesses that we have are different than, than what we used to have. Even the casino, you can get on at another casino, go to other state. So it's different than the businesses that we've had in the past. So,
I mean, some of this is, do we start a virtual diploma program? And I've seen other places do it across the country. You start a virtual diploma program here. I don't care if you're sitting in South Georgia in front of a laptop, as long as you're enrolled, as long as you're doing my coursework and doing what I say, and I'm checking it. Here's your diploma from Jefferson County Schools, and I'm going to get your enrollment, your FTE. We have got to be a little less. There's a lot of that holding on really tight to the tradition of this is how I went to school and this is how we did it and where's your abacus, Junior, we've really got to let folks loosen up a little bit, maintain the integrity of their education, but we have got to get a lot more flexible to meet people's needs, or they're going to find some place that does, especially the ones who have the mobility, the flexibility, the affluence to do that, which means that the folks that don't have that flexibility and affluence, who are going to require a lot more support from us, aren't going to have that same peer group, and it's just it will be negative for everyone involved if we can't make that shift.
and we've seen that in higher ed.
True, absolutely, and I do, to your point, Mark. I understand and agree completely. I have a single child. Had him when I was 36. All of my college-educated peers who went and got masters and doctorates and had to wait to have kids, it is a trend. I do think that we are going to have less and less and less children born. You can't afford them. I mean, you guys made some stuff up. I don't know what you did. But you guys made some stuff up. But generationally, it is highly unlikely that your kids are going to have 3 or 4 kids. It just is. It just is.
Dr. Gibson, with the July 1, the option to move, are there any other parts in the state that have piloted that? They've started to do that? Where did that come from? What were some of the challenges, with that and expenses?
I would say no one has piloted this.
Okay.
The legislature wrote this into HB 206 mostly, I will be honest, as a response to, they had originally, in the original bill, they put in charter schools. As you saw, there was a significant amount of resistance to that, mostly from the personnel organizations. And I think that there was a dedicated core group of legislators who felt like they had promised school choice to their constituents. And if they couldn't do it through charter schools, this was their secondary backdoor way of doing it. So it wasn't my opinion. It wasn't very heavily vetted because as we've inquired with the State Department, there are a lot of unanswered questions about, so first of all, it's based on capacity. We have to have room for you in order to let you in. If there's a 25 student limit and I have 25 students in that class, you can't come in. You have to choose another class. But they basic questions like, okay, I have 23 kids in Miss Harner's class. You come from Berkeley and you say, I want my kids in there. I put them in there. And then I actually physically buy a house and move right there. Do I kick those kids out? Do I make the people who own a house here put their kids somewhere else? They haven't answered questions like that. Things about giving our own employees enrollment preference, which we've always done. If you're an employee here, one of the benefits is you send your kid to any school that you want, and we count you as part of the Native population. We have rules about you have to maintain certain discipline and attendance standards in order for you to stay a transfer. If you're missing 82 days a year, you're making my statistics look bad and you don't live here. So we've asked, trust me, all of those questions, and WVDE is promulgating those rules, but some of my great concerns lie around there's no transportation for general education students. So I think there's going to be some limitations on the number of families in Berkeley who can drive their kids to school in the morning, drop them off, then drive back and pick them up in the afternoon and take them back. There is not that prohibition for special education students because federal law guarantees them the right to transportation. So you can live clear on the other side of Berkeley. If you're a child with special needs, and if we have room and capacity, you can come and register, and you have to be transported. So the 8 counties, we have met and agreed on a transportation formula that we're working through about each one of us driving to certain set points, which partially we already do for homeless McKinney-Vento. It is a great big unknown, and right now, Morgan and Berkeley are really the only school systems who are sufficiently close to us that would probably come and enroll. And I think that there are probably some incentives for folks simply from performance issues to come and enroll in Jefferson. But until they promulgate those rules, I will tell you right now, we're pulling our hair out trying to do staffing projections for places because I can project all I want. And if I get 20, 30, 50 kids who come over the border, you cannot tell them no unless you do not have a space for them. So we don't have the rules for capacity yet in every instance. So it's going to be an interesting staffing year.
Have they defined those rules for capacity yet?
No, sir, they have not.
Okay. So
We assume they're going to use class size in K through 6 because that would just make sense. But after that, are they going to use SBA? Because SBA has a capacity based on square footage.
percentiles, yes.
Yes, sir. But as you well know, they take nothing else into consideration. They take every square foot. There's no such thing as counselor's offices or, every square foot is a kid could be in there.
Right.
So, yeah, that keeps me up at night.
Well, circling back to something positive, to your credit, we did have the virtual academy that we started last year at the middle school that gave parents flexibility, and it did go into the high school this year. So that's one positive thing.
That is. We're working really hard. Cindy Jones has been working incredibly hard to get a day treatment facility established in Jefferson County, and we have run into roadblocks like you cannot imagine. But people here, I do think if anybody's poised to take advantage of this, it's Jefferson. We have a very well-educated, very forward-thinking population. So I think they've embraced things that we're trying to do. We just have to navigate some bureaucracy.
My only question would be, is there a time that we can try to think about, okay, so we know that we need to see these changes, we know that we've had these drops. So we know that we will have, our next budget meeting, but will we have recommendations on, here are, we think our 3 best options on where we need to make the cuts, what we're gonna do, and how we are, you know, gonna make combinations or not, or this or that, even a 2 to 5 year plan on what we're gonna do, assuming that we're gonna stay on this trajectory.
Partially, yes, ma'am. There are a couple of things. Number one, as you've heard, the revenue projections for first quarter did not come in as high as the state anticipated, so they are sending us some signals about the possibility of a mid-year cut. We did build into the budget a $400,000 mid-year cut if it becomes necessary. We do have some attrition things that we want to talk to you about, where basically we are not, and let me just say, we are not at a position to cut staff. Like, we are just not. We're not riffing anybody. Nobody is losing their jobs. Enough people move, and there's enough churn every year so we can start chipping away through attrition at some of these things, just not refilling some jobs that go away. We've been doing that at central office for the last 3 years. So, you know, we're looking at different spaces around the system where we can do that without it having a negative impact on class sizes. So that's going to be the biggest piece of it. But again, I will say this, we're in a good position. Money-wise, we've been conservative. We really have. And with the step 5 money, now granted, we were already way over formula because we were providing things that the state doesn't think we need, like mental health for children, who knew, counseling for children. But that additional funding did help ease that gap somewhat. Our special education folks are just knocking the Medicaid billing out of the park. They are killing themselves billing it every single time. Joyce White and the innovation that transportation had, so that we leased those buses where all of a sudden, instead of having a dozen buses that we don't get a dime for because they all have too many miles on them. Once you get past, what is it, 120,000? 180. Once you get past 180,000, doesn't matter how many miles you're driving, you don't get a dime. So we had all these older buses, and as soon as we leased the new ones and pushed those out, all of a sudden we're pulling in revenue for all of those that we weren't before. So it's no one big pie in the sky thing. It's going to be 100 little things that we do along the way that's going to make us.
And do we have an opportunity over the coming months to talk about and brainstorm some of those thoughts and ideas that will lead to the educational changes that we need to see long-term in general? I mean, I hear what you're saying as far as trying to be more creative, and I feel like I'm even seeing that at even elementary or middle school levels. I mean, even with what I hear in my own house. Just, you know, if
we've been doing that with the principals. We meet with them monthly, and Mr. Dilly had a great session with them. As a matter of fact, part of our student government session was the same thing that we did with the principals to see if their ideas were matching about where they were going. We also are sitting down. This year, we prepared every single principal the most extensive they have ever seen. Budget packets with every dime that they get, every dime that's in every booster account, faculty senate, step 6, step 7, Title I, Title II, so they can see every staff person, professional service. We basically turned their schools inside out, upside down, and said, I need you to look at everything, and you know what you need to do. Meet with us one-on-one, and we're gonna give you every bit of flexibility that the law gives us, and then maybe more if nobody comes and asks any questions. You tell me what you need to make this work. And so we're going through that process with them to help inform our budget process in January when we come to you.
I feel like we need some help as well, and we're gonna need conversations as well with community and parents, because, you know, for myself as a parent, I need to be able to know too how to be supportive of staff, you know, where if I'm gonna ask for the flexibility, I have to understand that the staff in my
child's classroom has absolutely no education whatsoever on how to do things any differently than the way they were trained 10 to 20 years ago. Yet the children are frankly demanding something different. And I sense that frustration growing. You know, I wanna learn more, or I don't wanna spend 5 days on this, or I can Google this in 30 seconds, I can learn all these things. I can, you know, let's do this, and there's just this sense of, it's exciting for them. I love the world that they want to go find. I think they're more civically minded, I think they're excited about things like that, excited about the world around them, but at the same time, they're looking for something more. And I don't think even as far as West Virginia Department of Education or any place across the country, I don't think it's just West Virginia, is necessarily keeping up with that as well. You know, if they, just this week, it was, we're gonna learn the circulatory system. Oh, that's exciting. No, it's not. I learned that in elementary school. Already done it. We spent, maybe not all the elementary schools did it, but I did it. I don't wanna do it again. I wanna do this. Can't we do this? I don't, you know,
And our
it's
staff
not
can
the
only
staff's
learn so
fault.
much so quickly. So
Right.
I will say this, so one of the other cost-saving things that we're working on is, per the board's direction to me, we are working furiously to get everyone's master schedule completed before they leave for the school year. We sent our principals through. Principals don't get master scheduling training. It's not part of your administrative program, it's just not. And some of our expenses come about because we make these master schedules and then we try to fit staff in around it. And when they don't fit, they say, well, I need an extra person because I don't have anybody for these 2 periods. I can't leave kids sitting in there, so we get another staff person. So part of what we've done is we've said we have got to do a better design on master scheduling. And some of that may be people who want 32 versions of the same class. Well, I want this level, and then I want honors, and then I want honors plus, and then I want honors plus credit, and then I want basic, and then I want, I mean, they want because people want what they want. That may resonate with some people here. And when you want every one of those options because these 3 loud people want them, every bit of that is money. Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. We can do anything you want. We can't do everything you want. So some of these master schedules, when we get them locked down, some of these schools, it'd be like, oh my gosh, I need 2 less staff people at this school. And then through attrition, hey, again, there will be jobs for everybody. We have plenty of jobs. We recruit all the time. We have 50 plus openings a year. Easy peasy, have everybody a job. But people are gonna have to be a little more flexible. It's just reality.
When you talk about kids being different and wanting more and more and more, when you think about it, when you were in kindergarten and 5 years old, you'd go up to your television and have to push the button or dial the knob to get one of the 5 stations, right? Now a 5-year-old takes a remote control, has 700 and something channels to pick from. If they don't see something like there's, you know, on demand, and they can find whatever, they get whatever they want.
Disney, yeah.
So I mean, it is a different world that they're growing up in than we grew up in.
And you just tell it, push the little thing.
It
Hey,
talks.
Raider Nation, and it finds them. Right. You are exactly right. It's just difficult, and it's a lot to ask of people who spent their whole lives being trained to do something and quite frankly do it pretty damn well.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, but okay, do all of that, but do it this way. So it's a lot to ask of people.
And that's where, like I said, I wanna be able to be supportive of that. I know that we all do as well. You know, and supportive of the kids to be able to continue to keep the same level of respect and whatnot as well, for them. And I feel like that's another challenge for staff, that they feel very disrespected by students today in many ways. And, you know, I
And they
don't
are
know
in
if
some
it's, they are, and I don't know where that level of frustration is or where that level of disrespect is coming from. And so I don't know. I think we just have a lot to try to to figure out.
But lots of good opportunities.
Yep, we have totally digressed off of district enrollment. So, child nutrition?
Yes, ma'am. Miss Jeannie Domaskis. She's turning the air conditioning behind you. Please wait while we turn on the central office's air conditioning right here.
That saves some money, right?
We're saving some money right there.
Good evening. I'm here this evening to just do a little overview of child nutrition for the year. The one thing that was passed in legislature this year that affected us greatly is the West Virginia Fresh Food Act. It was House Bill 2396. And what it states basically is that 5% of my food budget now has to be spent locally, and what they mean by locally is no more the 200-mile radius that they used to call local. It's West Virginia local. So unfortunately, they did not take into consideration the northern and eastern panhandles. I can't get anybody from Clarksburg to deliver fresh produce to me and get it here in a timely fashion that it hasn't already started wilting and molding and those kind of things. So it has proved to be a very cumbersome thing for Berkeley and Jefferson counties to try to take on. But we have worked very closely together, and we continue to do so. But we've worked with Kilmer's Farm Market most of all. Derek Kilmer has went throughout the state looking for farmers that want to serve the school population, and he is buying up their items wherever they may be and bringing them in for us so that we can try to meet this new legislation. So far, for this school year, and that is only for August, September, and October, which, of course, are some of our best growing months for the state of West Virginia. So it will take a huge dip for the next 4 months, probably, but we're currently at 33% West Virginia grown product. And I don't know if any of you noticed, but on the menu since we started in August, there was a thing that changed, and it says West Virginia Fresh by the applesauce, the pears, the apples, whatever it may be. And that's part of this West Virginia Food Act, that we meet what we need to meet. That applesauce product, Derek Kilmer actually came up with the idea that he would take his apples, get them processed, make it into applesauce so that it is still a West Virginia produced product. Like I said, he has really went above and beyond to help us make this work for us. The other item that we're buying locally in West Virginia is ground beef from Flying W Farms. It's out of Mineral County. They are a location that can supply the kind of ground beef that we need. I know that many years ago, we tried it locally here with a local farmer who just couldn't keep up with our demand. When you're talking about when we serve a meal and it's 400 cases of 30 pounds of ground beef to serve all 17 schools, it's a lot of ground beef. So Flying W is able to meet our needs. And currently, I have bought a little over 8,000 pounds so far this year. From Flying W. I had purchased from Flying W previously, but it has come to the forefront now that we've had this legislation enacted. Currently, we don't have any farms in Jefferson County that myself or Derek Kilmer are aware of that have the certification that is needed, and that is the GIP-GAP certification, good handling practices, and good agriculture practices, so that we know everything that's coming from that farm meets USDA standards. And it is a process that you go through with USDA. Does cost money, does take time. If you're not producing a large amount from your farm, chances are you're probably not going to go through that process if you don't have to. So we keep looking. Derek keeps asking, but so far we haven't found any of our local Jefferson County farmers that are able to produce that. But Derek has also planted lots of new crops for us in the schools. I mean, he's producing pears and apricots and all different kinds of things on his orchard that he never produced before. Blueberries, I mean, just all kinds of things that he has tried his hand at trying to grow, and he's been successful. So he's been able to produce them and bring them in for us. That brings us to a new program that the State Department has enacted, and that's called West Virginia Wednesdays. I'm going to enact it and begin it here in Jefferson County on January 8th. And what we'll do is every Wednesday we will highlight some type of a West Virginia grown product, whether it be fresh fruits, vegetables, the ground beef, whatever it may be, in a recipe. All of our staff will be getting, all of the cook staff, let me say, will be getting blue and gold t-shirts that say West Virginia Wednesdays. They are provided by the State Department at no cost to the counties. So I think they're very excited. They keep asking, where's my t-shirt? Where's my t-shirt? When are we starting this? So they'll be very excited when they come on site and we get to start this. I had 2 schools that were really pushing for this, and that was Harpers Ferry Middle and Wildwood. They had heard about it, and I guess in other parts of the state, and they were very interested in bringing this on. A lot of things that the community may not know, the board may not know, is that I enacted when I came back to Jefferson County donations to the community. It was something that I had done elsewhere. Before my Thanksgiving break, I will contact each of my schools. They will drop off these foods at a central location, probably more than likely a middle school. And then Todd will go around with our refrigerator truck and pick all those items up. I'll work with Jefferson County Ministries to get those dropped off, and they will distribute to our local families. These are perishable items that may not last the entire week that we're out. Milk, for instance, is a really unique product because our milk comes out of a depot in Cumberland, Maryland. If we have any left over at that last day, they don't want to, it's not cost effective for them to send their drivers back over to pick it up and then in turn try to resell it. They just credit us whatever we say we have left, and then we pick it up, take it to Jefferson Community Ministries and donate it to the community, and it is no loss to our system whatsoever. Fresh fruits and vegetables, those are down to the bare minimum, but for salad bars, whatever's left over, and we're not gonna be running salad bars for a whole week, we go ahead and take to Jefferson Community Ministries. The other thing that is going to be coming out with child nutrition is the NutriSlice program. Some of you may have heard of it. It is being currently used in 2 other counties in West Virginia, one being Marion County in the center part of the state and Berkeley County. This product is used for menu development as well as for student and parent use. It has a app that's downloaded on a phone. So if the student can't remember what they're having for lunch one morning when they get to school, they can just pull it up, take a look. They'll know exactly what they're having. The biggest selling point to this new software is the fact that if we have a special diet student, I spend lots of hours calculating carb counts, all the nutritional items that need to be made, following regulations, and getting those things to the nurses if I can. If I am away or they need something, they're sitting at their desk calculating all those things for those special need diet students.
So this is going to eliminate that. Once we load everything into the software, all you're going to have to do is actually click on a menu item, and it's going to give you all the nutritionals of those items. It's going to give you an ingredient list. We have well over 75 allergy students currently in the county that have severe allergies. So this is going to be a way that parents can double check items to make sure that there is nothing in that ingredient list that their child's going to be allergic to that's going to cause them to have an allergic reaction. The anticipated rollout date for this program is going to be December 2nd. Just depends on how quickly NutriSlice finishes the back end, loading all the products that we use currently into the software. And how quickly I can get them the other information that they need. But our anticipated rollout date is going to be December 2nd. Now I'm hoping this is going to work for me. I'm not so sure that it will. Just to give you an idea, if I click on lunch at Musselman High School in Berkeley County, it pulls up the entire menu for the month. And then if I go and just happen to click on Wednesday the 6th, as you can see, that first one that I pull up, it tells you how much fat, how many carbs are in it, what it's made of, the ingredients that are there. And there are so many other things that can be done as a parent from your phone on the app. But that's one of the major things that I think is very helpful to parents as well as our staff in the schools that are concerned about the special diets of students.
And I love it that the students can rate the food so we can actually get some feedback from them about what menu items they enjoy the most and like the best and want.
Central warehouse freezer. The parts are to be arriving the week of November the 18th, and installation should begin on November 25th. They're telling me that they anticipate to be done sooner than December 6th, but I know how things go. So I gave us the few extra days and put December 6th as the project completion date. And again, this freezer is to allow us to buy additional USDA commodity items. And on this next slide, I kind of took the Thanksgiving turkey for our Thanksgiving meal next Thursday. If I purchase it from my current vendor, which is under bid, it's $2.99 a pound. Total cost to serve that across the county is $2,242.50. If I purchase it from USDA, it's 9 cents a pound for a total cost of $1,350. Ground beef is even more cost effective. Purchase it from the vendor, it's $2.29 a pound. Cost me $13,716 to serve that product to the students across the county. If I get it from USDA, it's 11 cents per pound. Total cost is only $1,350. So this is why I've been pushing so hard to get the freezer, because no matter what you purchase from the commodities, as long as it's not a processed item, it's $4.50. So it's not cost effective for me to buy a $16 case of corn to sit on the shelf when I can be buying the $75 case of ground beef for that $4.50. So you're getting a lot more bang for your buck if you can get those items that cost us more from our vendor. So that is the reason that we're putting the freezer in and hoping to utilize more of the frozen items from USDA, as well as being able to buy directly from a manufacturer at a truckload, because you get the biggest break of food cost if you can buy an entire truckload. And Berkeley and I could split an entire truckload with no problem once I get this freezer in place. So, that's all I have for this evening. Do you have questions?
Is there a projection, or are there certain foods that you've already identified that these would be the ones that we would go at first?
As far as the commodities for the
Yeah.
freezer, well, ground beef's gonna be number one. We serve so many items with ground beef. Ground beef will be a huge one. Ground beef patties, the hamburger patties, they're next. Chicken nuggets, chicken strips, they're high on the list. And pizza. Pizza's always high on the list. You know, pizza's every Friday.
Yeah.
So, and they do offer a frozen pizza product. Yeah.
That's great. Great savings.
I remember those USDA bulk discounts was one of the big reasons why we did the freezer. How is that going to impact, you know, using ground beef from the West Virginia Flying W farms? I mean, is that
We
doesn't
still
make-
have so much need for ground beef. I mean, if you follow the menu very much, the ground beef usage is right up next to the chicken. So I don't think it's going to be any issue with still getting what we need to get from Flying W, which, by the way, does match our bid price from our current vendor. He has sold enough to the school systems in the Eastern Panhandle that he's able to meet that. So we're not paying any more than we would if we were buying it from our vendor. However, it's still going to be significant cheaper if I get it from commodity.
Well, it would still be the $2.29 a pound versus the 11 cents a pound. I mean,
Right.
It's hard to justify that price difference.
It is hard to justify, however, legislation has been enacted that I don't have a choice not to. I have to meet that 5% minimum of my budget. So however I need to meet that 5% minimum. We're trying to do it with fruits and vegetables. However, it's such a short growing season. That's why I did August through October as much as we can, and then we'll kick that back in starting April through June. But we're just going to play with numbers this year to see how it goes, since it is the very first year we've been able to do it.
Plus, it'll reduce your budget if you go with the USDA, so
Certainly.
that 5% is less.
That's correct. Yes.
And that's 5% over everything. It's not 5% of your meat and 5% of your poultry. And
No, it is
5%.
not. It's
Okay.
not broken down by 5%. No.
That's good.
Yes.
Sorry. How do you feel like we've done, Jenny, as far as meeting the needs of free and reduced lunch and making sure that we have kids covered for lunch? Have we, in the last 3 years, decreased how many lunches we're serving overall, notwithstanding the population obviously decrease? Overall, do we find that more kids are eating lunch, less kids are eating lunch? Do they like the changes that have been made in the menu?
Overall, I have seen a small increase, and we're talking maybe 3% increase over the last 4 years in students participating in the program. Our free and reduced numbers continue to slightly go up. And we try to capture all those students now. We went back to a couple years ago, sending home all the paper forms, as well as being able to go online and apply for those. And we've been mailing out letters for this school year, and then we also started a new initiative where we're emailing parents who hadn't signed up yet for their free and reduced program and had in the past, so we emailed them to let them know that, you know, you're getting ready to go on a full paid status, so now's the time. If you haven't already done so, please fill out the form. Other questions?
Is there any, can I ask one more? Okay. Is there anything else that you would say as far as child nutrition goes that you'd like to see changed, or some innovation that you think we should be doing? I mean, you've been involved in it for a lot of years at this point, so I know as budgets tend to decrease and you know, different areas, and we need to be more efficient, but as well feeding kids what they actually want to eat.
so we throw less of it away. Is there anything that you can think of that you'd like to see changed, or someplace you'd like to see us go, or support you need from the board to try to make that kind of a change?
Not that I know of at this point. I think we're heading in the right direction. I'm doing more and more of the recipe items, slowly bringing those back into place. Because of staffing constraints in some of the schools, it makes it difficult. It's a lot harder for them. But we're slowly getting there again, where we're doing a few more recipe items instead of just that heat and serve all the time. But right now, you know, we have some age on some equipment, and I'm working on an equipment replacement program for Joyce, so that we'll have that in place, so we can rotate that equipment out, hopefully on a regular basis as the money is available.
Thank you very
All right.
much.
Thank you.
Madam Superintendent, any comments this evening?
The only comment I have is to thank the schools for some very, very poignant Veterans Day programs. Many of them honored the parents of their kids who were veterans and had special ceremonies in their schools. They just really did a fantastic job. So it was impressive, the ones that I got to see.
Thank you. All right. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the regular board meeting held October 28th?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any comments or changes? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. No citizens' comments this evening, Ms. Harner? Okay. Consent agenda. Any?
Woohoo! At long last, glory hallelujah. As the board and the public is aware, we have spent the last year and 3 months in search of a cultural diversity coordinator. We went through 5 rounds of interviews, and I think it's a testament to how important we felt that position was, is that, and we said this several times, that it was more important that we get the right person than that we do it quickly. I would like to publicly thank both Ms. Bonet and Mr. Rutherford for being community representatives, both of the Hispanic Outreach and the NAACP. We felt it was incredibly important, because this position is a liaison for the community and the schools, that everyone be involved in the decision. And to their credit, we all went through it together, and in the end, we didn't settle until we got someone that it was an absolute unanimous. She walked out the door, and we all looked at each other and went, "Oh, thank you, Jesus, we're done." Oh my God, this is fantastic. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce you to the lovely and talented Miss Tanya Dallas Lewis, who has a degree from George Mason University, is a cultural proficiency trained workshop facilitator, is a certified deep equity and inclusion facilitator, and has very wisely made the choice to leave Berkeley and come join us in Jefferson County. Cannot begin to tell you how excited I am that she is here. So if you could please help me welcome her, and then I believe that she has some family here with her.
I do. Do I get to speak?
Oh, please, honey, please. You sat here for an hour and a half. Your poor boys, they're just dying on the vine.
Please feel free to step up to the podium.
Sure,
Please do.
sure. Well, first I'd like to say I'm just so happy to be here, and thank you to Dr. Gibson. Of course, she was in Berkeley County, but she's wisely come over here. So to the beautiful Amy Loring and all of the wonderful people I met during that process. So it is an honor to meet all of you. I will be leaving my 7th grade classroom. I'm an ELA teacher as well. So this will be a change, but it's a welcome one, because I'm so passionate about what you guys are passionate about. And I'm so excited to bring some things to this community, as well as work with some of the great programs that you guys are already doing. I would like to introduce my 2 sons whom I love, and she was talking about Musselman. My oldest son, Dalen, stand up. He's 18. He just graduated from Musselman High School. proud of him. Marching band student. I don't know how much you guys know about Musselman, but their marching band program is awesome. But so is Jefferson County. I know, look, she's already looking.
Oh, they were about to vote.
It's okay.
Okay, they haven't voted yet, honey.
Okay. I know. So, and then lastly, my last born son, Samson, stand up, sweetie. He goes to Mountain Ridge Middle School. And so I wanted to bring them tonight just so they could see some of the wonderful people that I will hopefully have the pleasure of working with here. So thank you guys again.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for coming and supporting your mom. This is a family business. And one of the things that we say here when we talk to our staff is family first, which means that her most important job is being your mom. And as much as we love her and we're excited for her to come here, this job is second. Being your mom is first. So thanks for being there and supporting her. All right, we can't wait to have her on board.
So we need students if you want to.
Absolutely, yes, that is an employee benefit. You can place your child in any school in Jefferson. Just saying. He's like, I know.
So any other changes or additions or deletions or anything?
Oh, it does not. How could you top that? Nothing gets more exciting than that.
That's for exciting. I just asked for changes.
Yes, great. Thank you, Amy. Speaking of which, we are just
All right, before we get ourselves into any more trouble here, is there a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All right, all in favor of the consent agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Can we pause then?
Yes.
Thank you so much. You guys have
Thank you.
spent a lot of
Thank
time
you.
and effort and energy. Go, God. Thank you for your patience. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to see you.
Me too.
Okay. Yeah, roll out. I just didn't want them to,
Oh.
because they're gonna sit there politely for another however long.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
I know you wanted an audience, Brandon, so you had to go last. I'll cheer for you, Brandon. I'll cheer for you.
I'm here for support.
No unfinished business. Moving on to 14A. Request to go out to bid to procure an architect for T.A. Lowry's HVAC major improvement project.
Good evening. I'm coming before you to ask to go out to bid to procure an architect for our major improvement project, which will be a total replacement of the HVAC at T.A. Lowry Elementary School. As we'd like to begin as soon as the kids' last feet leave the property, we want to go ahead and procure an architect so that we'll be able to have a good scope for the project and get everything in order to begin to hire a contractor, clerk of the works, and everything that's required per the SBA. So with your permission, we will advertise for an architect.
All right. And before I ask for that architect, that was a MIP grant that we received
Yes.
for that, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, major
For-
improvement project grant.
Yes.
It's 900, they're giving us 958,
Just shy of $1 million.
just shy of $1
That's
million,
correct.
yes, towards the
Yes.
project.
Okay. Is there a motion to go out for bid to procure an architect for T.A. Lowry's HVAC major improvement project? Second?
Second.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you. Are
You're
you
welcome.
next, the approval of the lawn care bid?
I'm next with the lawn care, yes. We have gotten our committee together and put together a rubric and made a recommendation for you this evening for a lawn care vendor for the next year. I've broken down, as you can see, monthly, yearly costs and remaining costs for this fiscal year. On our rubric, I want you to know that we looked at criteria with commercial experiences, We asked for their references. Experience with the Jefferson County Board of Education was important to us. That they were a local vendor was another criteria that was important. We also looked at their safety record and any additional services that they could provide. So we had very good bidders in this process, but we have recommended R&L. And the last time I came before you, I spoke about also kind of wrapping mulch in that. It would be an additional $30,000 to this bid, but our recommendation at this time is to forego that and just do the lawn care so that we can actively seek in the moment competitive bidding for mulch and meet the regulations that we need to meet. And we felt that that would be best separated from lawn care. So our recommendation tonight is that R&L receive the lawn care bid.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions?
I've got a question.
Sure.
Now, the R&Ls who we've had this last year.
That is
right?
correct. That is correct.
Cornerstone is the new company. That's the first time I've seen them bid anything for us. Is that correct?
No, they bid last time.
They did?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, okay. I didn't remember their name last time.
JPM did not bid last round, but they were the ones that we had for 10 years before R&L.
Okay, so JPM's the one we had before R&L.
R&L's the one we've had this past
18 months.
18 months.
And we originally paid R&L how much more money than what we had paid JPM, or what we had looked at for the bid? Wasn't
My
it like
recollection is
$60,000?
that, how much?
Wasn't it like $60,000 we
Yes.
chose last time?
Yes.
Yes, the prices are very, very similar this go round.
The contract was up this go round, so we had to go out to bid. Previously, I believe that was done prior to Brandon and I.
Right, well, and that was my point of the whole thing, is recognizing that, because I personally feel the same way. I've noticed that, I think the schools look good and everything looks good, but I don't think that it has been a fair assessment. Number one, the contract changed. So the contract and the expectations for R&L were different than what JPM had. So I don't think it's a fair assessment to say they've done a better job. They've done their job, but JPM didn't have the same job. I think it's now it's fair. They both bid the same thing. They chose not to bid the last time, so it's still fair. Or whoever else, Cornerstone, I think there was a different one too, if I remember correctly, but, I guess my only hesitation in looking at this are the two things, the cost and the difference for the bid, which is about $40,000, and the cost, the remaining costs through the end of fiscal year 19, which I'm not really sure what those would be. But do you have a number for us of what our yearly cost was total of what we've spent with R&L this year that has cost us for the landscaping and maintenance and any other projects we have that we ask for a company to do for our school system?
So for your first 12 months with R&L, you paid the same 23,250? That was his monthly rate for the first 12 months. Then your last 6 months, that rate jumped up to $30,000 a month. Now the reason that jumped up is because it still included all of your fall mulching to get schools ready to go, where they trimmed up all your shrubs, redid the edges of the mulch beds, and they still mulched all the 22 locations. So that's why that monthly rate had jumped up $6,000. So the reason why it's going back down to the 23,000 is because that mulch is now spread out across 12 months as opposed to 6 months. Because the reason that it was bid out for 18 months last time was our predecessors wanted the contract to end at the end of mowing season. So for now on, you will only actually pay half of that yearly price will only come out of each fiscal year.
Each fiscal year's budget. Plus, you'll have companies that their workload just came down and they maybe want to be more competitive. That was
Yes.
part of the idea behind it.
And in regards to the mulch that we're talking about, keeping up to yearly bid is the playground mulch. All of your building mulch is still included in that bid.
So how did we do with the brim assessment on our playground mulch?
In years past, our brim assessment is generally always in the spring. So
How did we
one,
do this past spring then?
this very similar to years earlier. They refill it in the fall, kids kick it out, the mowers hit it. So yes, generally we get dinged every spring. So one other advantage to bidding it out yearly with playground mulch that Joyce and I discussed is that we can be very, very specific. Whereas when we bid it, we can say not just 12 inches total, because from what I've seen just in the last 3-4 months that I've been here, they didn't dig out the old mulch and put new fresh mulch. It was just, let's toss in and get 12 inches and let's go. So when we bid it for this upcoming year, we're gonna be very specific to dig out all the mulch, place new mulch, and then we could also put in periodically checkpoints that, you know, when you bid it and say that you're gonna get the job for the year, if CW Shipley needs mulch underneath the swings before March, that's what we do.
Yeah,
So to check the
maybe
depths.
they have checkpoint
Yes.
times.
And if we included it in that yearly bid, we wouldn't have.
It won't get dinged as much.
Right, and there's always gonna be a winner and a loser when you do a yearly bid. And we could be on the winning end, but then they're gonna win somewhere else. So at least this way, both sides will feel that they're getting a good deal.
So if the scope of work is the same, and we had this other person for 10 years, knowing that they obviously had different leadership that they had to, work with, what makes this company, I mean, I know last year we had to go with, we didn't have them bid, so we had nobody we knew except this company. It was a lot more money, so we decided it. We know what kind of financial situation we're in. We have 2 people who bid the same exact things. We have 2 people that we kind of know. What makes, I mean, frankly, what makes them $40,000 a year more
When
better?
when the committee met, the one point that RNL was awarded over JPM is that they are a Jefferson County business, whereas JPM is a Berkeley County business. Everything else was very, very close. So I guess in the grand scope of things, you would have to make a decision on what is considered a local vendor.
So, but JPM, when they worked for us, was a local business, and then they moved out of the area to Berkeley County.
That's possible, I don't know that. I know where he's located now. He
But I
lives-
get it, he does,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so that was the biggest thing, okay. I mean, that helps to make the decision, yes or no. I mean, I'm looking at it financially, I wanna make
Sure.
sure, I don't think
They were all very close.
and I think they've done a great job for us.
Yeah, they were very, very close, and the other thing was quality, but, you know, I respect your opinion, as respectfully, it's up to the board. Yeah.
Well, and like I said, when you go back and you look at both of those they were totally different scopes of work.
Sure.
So, I don't think I agree, I think the new scope of work, I love, and I think that you guys have done a great job.
Right.
Of making sure that those were written correctly and that things have to be done, it keeps the schools looking nice, and that's what our parents, and community expect.
Yeah, I know
And
when
that's
I
very
was
good.
maintenance director previously, one of the many complaints I would field was over lawn care. If it wasn't going well, there were no end of phone calls, and I couldn't walk 2 feet onto property before someone spoke about the lawn care. So it is important. It's the first impression people get of our schools.
And keep in mind, this is just for 1 year, so the board will have an option to renew for year 2 and year 3.
That's right.
All 3 companies that bid did make the choice to keep their price consistent for year 1, year 2, and year 3, if we choose to do so.
So, we'd be looking at $120,000.
I would only say that the difference in quality, and again, this is just me who was walking in cold. The first year that I was here, under the previous contract with the previous vendor, we had a significantly difficult time. Our schools had weeds, they had knee-high grass, there were things, nothing was weeded, nothing was cut, we were getting complaints from parents, schools looked abandoned. It was a significant issue. Now, at the time, we were told that the legislation changed for how much mulch needed to be in the playgrounds, so that they spent all of their time going back and remulching the playgrounds and didn't have time to get schools open. So our first week and a half of schools, we had, things growing out of the bushes down at Page Jackson, and it just looked pretty bad. So perhaps we've gotten better about giving people information, but it's sort of like with our HVAC contract and some other things. I will say there are things that it is worth to pay the money to have the quality and the assurance. And again, I don't know what all the circumstances were before that because I wasn't here. But I have gotten nothing but compliments on our lawn service for the last 2 years about their quality. I see Mark shaking his head. If you have something to
No, absolutely.
chime in.
It just looks a whole lot better. I mean, I don't know what the contract was for the other company, but this company has come in and they have kept all our schools looking good, and I've had no complaints since they've been working.
And generally, if there is a complaint or if we need anything, if you call Mr. Liam, he's very quick to take care of it.
And I do think if we're going to go out to, and again, this is a decision of the board and it's a financial balance. But if we're going to go out to the community and say, hey, we need your support. We have some declining enrollment. We have some needs that we want you to fill. I think it's important for us to also be able to look them in the eye and say, and when we can, when it's competitive, we choose Jefferson County companies. We choose Jefferson County businesses. When that's possible, when it's feasible. And I don't know, you have to make a distinction about when that dollar amount makes it unfeasible, but I do think it helps to be able to walk in and say that to people.
Well, there's a motion on the table to approve the recommendation of the committee of R&L landscaping for the lawn care bid for fiscal year 20. Any further questions or comments? All right, all in favor of awarding R&L the bid?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Thank you. Number 15, possible executive session.
Yes, ma'am, we have executive session for personnel and I expect action.
And there will be action.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you.